So I'm not sure who wants to start the conversation about the resolutions. I think all of you guys have them. It's either hard copy or electronically. I'm not sure how you want to approach it. Do you want to just go line by line for those resolutions, or just to make sure that we have everybody?
I've got my folder right here, and I'll make it. To read them, that's a lot of reading.
Maybe if you go over section by section, or you want to stick to
We'll
the
go with
ones that
resolution.
change.
For one resolution at a time, ask your comments, so everybody's read them. I made a few notes, but I prefer to. So I'll read the title. Resolution 2022-1 submitted by staff adds and removes language in the students and learning section of drug abuse prevention line.
Okay, that would be, page 18, line 124, it looks like.
Oh, I'm jumping right to the resolutions.
Okay, so you're
Some of
going
us
to
are-
skip over things that are the same as they've been, and just go into where there's changes? Because that's the first change.
Yeah. 123,
Whatever's your pleasure, if you want to go
No,
resolution by resolution.
I just want to make sure I can.
That's how the legislation is going to go, with the vote on all of these by 600 representatives.
You're gonna have the handbook, so you're gonna go through all 100, or 56 pages.
Oh, I have a great permit, I didn't bring the handbook for everybody. It's,
You're gonna do both, I think you should just do the handbook.
I didn't start with the handbook. Well, I'm going to vote on the resolution, so I understand.
But you're gonna go through the handbook. That's fine, we're to speak, go ahead.
This is out of the handbook.
Yep, and some of us are following along.
Okay. I'd like to read the total form. It's way too small on the iPad. So if you'd like me to read the first paragraph, I can certainly do that.
No.
Or what your
Well, I
preference
think
is.
we're all honing in on the change, are we right?
Yes. So it looks like the proposed is taking out heroin and other opioid and change it to drug use. It's broader.
That looks okay.
So when the vote is taken on the floor, is it, do you go down line by line like this? So you're voting on this exact change and then now the next change, or is it the whole resolution?
Just the changes.
Okay.
But broken down item by item in the resolution?
They'll go line by line.
Okay, that's what I was.
Do we need to do that, right?
Well, I would support this change.
It's just condensing word.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who would like to support that change? Here?
No, because you never know anything like,
Right.
You know, a concern or an issue, and the key part is use.
Resolution 2022-2. So it provides new and additional dedicated funds to assist schools in the battle against drug addiction, heroin, and other abuse. Any other changes to that? That's the only thing right on that. Input, comments?
And that's line 131.
Support that as well.
I agree.
So it's okay.
So we're gonna go yes on that.
We're supposed to be taking a vote on this.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose.
We're gonna vote.
We're voting so that we know how to vote.
well, wait, that would have to be a policy change, to my understanding, for the vote of the board to then be
Not
with
in
town
work session.
meeting. Because we don't have a policy right now that states anything about this, right?
I thought that was our understanding when we decided that we wanted the discussion so that our delegate knew how to vote. Because our delegate represents the entire board. So that's what they would do.
I think though, we would need a policy change.
We're
also
looking
to do
towards
that.
guidance, because I want to get a consensus,
Just from a policy.
conversation.
Yeah.
Because I know
Good or
Riverside had
bad,
the same,
it's not, I agree, or I say yes. Not looking for yeses and I approve, we're looking for input.
Concerns.
Correct.
Just like they're gonna have at the conference, it's not gonna be, how does it pretty well, there'll be input there.
and when I brought it up at the board meeting, I just wanted whoever is going to vote to, I wanted a discussion on it, so we all know where everybody stands. And then, after the vote is taken, I think the person who does vote needs to report back on how they voted, so that the board and the community is aware of how they voted. That was my understanding.
Yeah, because I remember you saying.
Yeah, and I know Riverside, they actually had to do a policy change in order to have the voting process instead of just the discussion, and that's how we're gonna vote.
I don't think there's anything that precludes the board from doing it any way that they want. There's no policy that I'd say would conflict from them doing it this way. Whether they decided as a board that they needed a policy, it's up to that local board of education.
Well, one has to keep in mind that there's 599 other members that's gonna have members input, right? They have conversation, right? You open the floor before the vote is called,
If there's discussion.
if there's discussion often, right?
But I thought the purpose of us getting together was to direct Tom on how the board here wanted Tom to vote.
That was my understanding too, because Tom is our delegate representing us as a body.
Right.
Let's move forward, put a check mark down. Seems
So,
everybody agrees with it.
so on 2022-2, did we say yes on that one?
Well, it sounds like we have consensus.
I have a question though, because I know, during the delegate assembly, things can come for a vote that's not given prior. So I don't know, Mary, if you've experienced that before, but speaking with a couple people who have been delegates in the past, they said that sometimes you go to the delegate assembly and somebody, it'll arise from the floor. So then you would have to vote on things without us knowing
Like a different policy.
different things, yeah.
Well,
So,
I mean,
that's-
if there's a different policy that comes up, he's our delegate. I understand, but what we know is coming
And because you've done it so many years, Mary, you have that happen often, where something is different from the platform.
Doesn't have to be.
Because I would think too, most of this is probably gone over by council, OSBA council. So are they present to make sure if something was tweaked, that the wording would be?
There's a whole committee and a whole board.
After the delegates work or prior to, and that's what we have here in front of us. That's why I was just wondering if there was some kind of a divergence from this,
It would go, there's a whole panel. that
it's
reviews
present
everything.
there, not at a future time, but right there on the spot, gotcha. Okay.
So going forward, we're just making not an official policy, but like, this is what we're gonna set going forward for every year after that, then, where it's, we meet, we vote, and then the delegate goes. Cause I'm okay with that, that's how we're gonna do it, just moving forward in general, every year.
I thought that's what you wanted.
That's what I said, too.
No, I just thought, because there's really just one thing on here that I saw that could be an area of discussion. So I wanted to just make sure that the community is aware that we're having that discussion in front of them, and they know where we stand on that, before we send somebody in our taxpayer dollars to go, vote. And what they do with that vote is then, it raises to the legislative platform, and they go and lobby on behalf of OSBA, so.
From the last meeting too, it was discussed that we would just hit that, we felt like
That's what I thought.
controversial,
Yeah.
rather than going through everything line by line.
That's fine.
Should we just get to the
Does anybody have any
others?
Well-
contentious items on this list?
I do have one concern with this policy here. It is line 139. So it looks like they would add in the words that OSPA opposes legislation that allows public school personnel to use marijuana wrongfully by influence. Excuse me. So of course I agree that we shouldn't have people under the influence of drugs, while they're working in a public school, and that would include, we wouldn't want a person that was high on the job. However, marijuana is being used in different ways now. And with medical marijuana, I feel like this doesn't clarify if it's medical marijuana or, a recreational, I want to get high marijuana. And we could have staff or students that are prescribed, marijuana that's not getting them high because they have seizures, they have epilepsy, they have, excuse me, multiple sclerosis, chemotherapy, they could have PTSD. So there's just uses that, for me, this line is a concern because it doesn't separate out medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. If it had, it would be a different discussion for me, but I would vote against this because of the way it's working.
That's
Good point, Matt.
interesting, because the line above it talks about recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they just added in recreational.
If they had it in recreational, then yes.
And I can see where that could be a point of discussion on the floor.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense because that went up for a statewide vote was 2 years ago.
Yes.
So what we could do as a body is direct Tom to pose the question that either we remove it or we specify recreational.
I would prefer
That it will, that they'll lobby against any law that would allow the use of recreational marijuana by the district employee.
So what you're saying, if they don't, then you don't agree with this?
That's my opinion. I don't know if that's everyone's.
A, it either needs to be removed or B, it needs to specify recreational.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point. Does everyone agree?
Yeah, because 134 is opposing recreational.
Yeah. So we're doing all of them, or are we doing?
Once there are changes, I guess, we're gonna focus on those. Unless you have a concern about something.
Yeah, I would focus more on the ones that people may have questions on, like
Yeah.
Maggie just did. There's not,
Yeah, I didn't have questions on that.
Yeah.
It was that one.
And is 206 the, not including all students in the baseline beginning in kindergarten through 3rd grade, is that addressing the fact that the state report card separates depending on the number of students who are coming in below proficiency or below whatever the,
Judy, what line do you want?
so I'm down at
207.
207. opposition to legislation, it doesn't include all students in the baseline. So does that mean, like, for example, Solon doesn't get the K-3 proficiency score because they don't have enough students who don't meet the standard? And so if you have enough students who don't meet the standard, then you get that assessment included in your state report card. So is this trying to make sure that all students K-3 are being included in that literacy standard?
So you realize there's no change there, right? You're
Correct.
just questioning what that's
Yeah, I'm just
talking about.
wondering what
Okay.
that's talking.
I don't know, I mean, I guess that could be exempting students. You know, sometimes we exempt students with certain disabilities.
You know, they are an alternate assessment potentially too.
And there's so few of those students anymore, that's.
Yeah,
more
it's
rare.
actually have to be 1% below at this point.
What was that?
207.
207 has to do with, the system of assessments.
We're gonna go through, all these, is there a good board administrating so people in the audience can maybe see it, see what we're talking about? It just might be easier, all of us can be on the same page.
If you have it on the device, I can do that, I don't have the like.
Right.
Sure. And then you can control it, just give me a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's gotta be something with that K-2 literacy.
That's
Put it on the report cards.
Maybe top of it.
Kids and clarification on it.
Which resolution now is that?
It's
It's not a resolution.
line number 207.
June 7th.
It's out of our handbook, so there's almost understated.
I have a phone call to the state tomorrow anyway, and the person I'm speaking to actually might have an answer to this, so maybe I'll try and get an answer beforehand. Okay.
So if you, if they can clarify, then you don't have to.
I think what they're saying too is that you don't have to verify the baseline, you're at a true baseline, you can be weighted higher, right? You exclude certain kids.
Right.
You got, so, you have a weighted.
That's one of those data points that was pretty much manipulated by different school districts, depending on how big of a scoop you want to take to provide interventions for. Some districts took a really shallow scoop and you got an A, or now it's gonna be 5 stars on that indicator. Every district I've worked at previously has always taken a big scoop because we want to make sure that we're providing the appropriate intervention for students. Everything from the care of that indicator, not set on the report card because we're doing what was in the best interest of the kids.
Exactly. So
I'll
that's,
see if I can get that correct.
that's why I wondered if this would mean that everybody would get a score for that literacy piece, which would be very good. It gives you a chance then to see if you have, excuse me, a peer district that's doing a better job, you know, or if we're doing a better job, then we can share some of our strategies.
Was there any discussion on line 198 to 204? That deals with testing assessments. I didn't have any. I was sorry.
What resolution is that one?
The second one moves towards a very system of assessments that allows students.
The one that you, like, we're going to need to. This is, yeah, no, so that's, this is the statement. that has been tweaked or added?
Must be added. So, yeah.
Added. Mhm. And I know that they read well.
There it is.
Sorry, it took me a
Thank
little
you.
longer with an iPad than a computer.
Here you go.
Thank you. Better sideways.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
All right.
So are we going to the next one, or are we just gonna pick where we get notes?
You wanna just scroll down to the next one? So-
Sure.
254.
Yeah, there we go.
I thought that's even good reason.
None that I'm aware of, does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, right? 393?
So skipping 271.
No, do we skip one? Scroll too quick.
271 is the Academic Distress Commission, and that.
Oh, I didn't
Strike out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some strikeouts in a modification, but that seemed fine to me.
So go back to 393. So reduces the term length for the collective board of education member to anything less than 4 years.
Three 71.
393.
I don't have anything to say.
I disagree with it, but I'm probably the odd one out, so I just think there should be limits, consecutive limits on number of years for board members. But
So the second one now imposes limits on the number of terms you can
Yeah.
negotiate.
But
I mean, I don't feel strongly on this. Tell me your thoughts.
I think that other people, should have a chance, and I think that once you do have name recognition, you've been on it for 10 years, it's hard to get other people in. Fresh eyes are always really good. Sorry, I'm not saying anything against anybody who's been for a long time. I just feel like that in general about any elected position, so.
If you have
Nothing
nothing
personal.
because Tom and I have times when we were unopposed.
Good question.
That's a good question. Yeah, then I'd say, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody's running against you or anybody, then they should be able to do it.
So should we have term limits or no? That's the question.
I think the point made about there being a shortfall in candidates willing to serve, that's changed recently, but prior to that, was not something that was rare. Even now, like one of our current city council person who's running unopposed, and so. And I think you're right about name recognition gives an advantage, but I think there's a robust energy around all kinds of elections, so that, you have the opportunity to debate and share your point of view, and let the public then decide what they would like.
What are your thoughts?
I see no reason to change. See any reason to change.
I think it'll be very interesting to see if that comes up in conversation during the session.
That's just
What
my
is the
two
average bid? 15 is like astronomical, not many of them go past. 15 is like,
We've had, and I've seen people, and you'll see people at conference that
Yeah.
are about 20, 30 years.
When we were at our
But the
OSBA
average
one,
is like-
we were not, there were a couple that were like 30 years.
You mentioned that
one. Like 30 years, yeah, and I'm like, okay, yes, amazing, but also,
We started early.
so that's
what
okay.
district those represent, there's some very, there's like 600 districts.
Yeah.
How many of them are? We're above average.
And some are very small. That would be, I think, difficult for very small
Some may be
communities.
like that, huh?
You know,
And currently, did you have multiple candidates for open spots?
We expect people to run.
yeah. So
We don't have that issue, but yeah. If we could run out some people, that would be so sad. But yeah, I understand where you guys are coming from, it's just like, I feel like that about any elected position, so it sounds like the majority of the board would be okay with that, that's fine.
I would like the people
Yeah.
to fill out vacancy to, if there wasn't anybody to step forward to run, we have to appoint. That's less.
We're not considered politicians and don't make anything more than $125 a meeting.
And we could.
So it doesn't pay someone to secure their position as a board member because of the remuneration, the compensation and the benefits, as we have in our politicians.
No.
Don't take company car, don't have a house of blood.
So are we moving on then?
So basically you're saying you oppose that, right?
If you're okay with those changes, yeah.
Yeah, just
We support those changes.
as it's written. My only, are we on 411?
Yeah, so I don't have time with that. I think that's-
Yeah, that's the next one.
Under open enrollment section.
Parental rights and
411, 412.
Is there anybody that objects to this one? There's comments?
My only comment would be if this created a law where, say, at the beginning of a school year, you had to lay out your year-long lesson plans, not a syllabus, but lesson plans, detail by detail, because most teachers adjust the pacing and content and kind of how you focus on various activities or topics based on the students in front of you, so they're not generic. And so if that was an expectation, because it doesn't say that, but if that was an expectation that grew out of this spirit of the policy, that would concern me because I think it's untenable. You know, that you would expect a teacher to put all the materials in a big clump. I think then, because then you'd have to make changes and make sure that was okay. I think that's just not practical to good teaching practice. So,
I understand where you're going with that, but I don't see anything in here that really leads
No.
to that, so I don't see that in it.
so I just thought that where it says, OSBA opposes legislation that restricts the rights of parents and their guardians. And I would agree with that, that's, of course, but if it was applied in that specific way, because that was talked about in some various other things that I've read, that folks may want the whole list of what materials and topics and supporting documents and all that. I think you would have a lot of redundant work. So you make a plan and then have to keep changing it because you're planning the journey, you know, all the way across the whole school year. I don't think it's realistic.
I mean, I know that there's the Ohio Revised Code that already allows any parent to see any curriculum or any survey that's, you know, any curriculum, any survey, any X, Y, and Z. So I don't see this kind of replacing that. I just see this as like an extra enforcer to parents' rights.
Right, that's why I was concerned that it could be applied in that specific way, which I would be, I would object to only because it's not good practice, it's not good use of that teacher's time and effort, because it could limit creating the most effective teaching for the students that you have in front of you. Let's say, for example, you are teaching long division, and based on the students' scores, you realize I need to do some reteaching, I need to use another strategy, but you didn't have that included in the list. Now what? So I think, you know, you planned one schedule and now that gets tossed. I don't think it's a good use of the time, or it would make you maybe stick with the schedule. I can't stop here to reteach because I've already committed to the schedule. And I think that would be.
I have to support your thoughts on that too, Jenny. It's a concern for me. The line that's a concern is the parental right to know all aspects of students and learning. The word all is my concern is every bit of the lesson plan. It doesn't allow for that dynamic, teachable moment. Something's happened in the class where a child has asked about frogs or something, and you go off and let's research that, let's check that out. Or a child is passionate about something. As teachers, we don't know our students until they're in the classroom. So as things happen in their lives, or as we get to know them, sometimes you're changing how you need to teach them or what materials you're using to motivate them. Parents have every right to know what is being taught to their children, and Ohio law does have those provisions. You know, we know that Ohio schools are already required to provide parents with access to curriculum materials, and I completely agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But the all aspects, and I don't think that you're concerned with having all aspects put out a year before, and that was actually something that was proposed.
Yeah, it was.
Let me interrupt. So you don't have what I'm reading.
We're looking at it on the platform, which is the condensed version.
This
Oh,
one
what
here
was the
speaks
original?
to that.
Oh, thank
It
Oh,
clarifies
thank
all.
you.
In fact,
Let's hear it.
I'll read it verbatim.
Okay.
Susie Lawson moved. Terry Gibson seconded the motion to approve the resolution. Dr. Marguerite Bennett moved to amend the resolution to delete the word all. And Ed Penrod seconded the motion. President Heard called for discussion. Discussion followed. President Heard called for a vote on the amendment. Motion was passed. The amendment was passed.
So
All
where is,
will be removed.
So all would be.
All.
So why are we getting it like this?
yeah, I don't understand why they would.
Because that makes a big difference to me, and
Well, this is the resolution. I made copies of.
But in the handbook, all is in
when we
The
look
new
at
handbook.
all
Yeah,
aspects.
you can
What
see
should
it
be
there,
voted?
Tom.
Mhm.
That's what we're looking at.
So when it says all aspects of students' learning, okay. And then student governance, finances, personnel. I mean, all aspects of personnel, I mean, what kinds of details?
I think it's just implying that they have the ability to ask the question and get an answer. I don't think it's saying you have to lay everything out. It's just saying if someone was to ask, that they would be told.
One of the things
With
is
what limits though? I mean, my home address, my.
Well, limits that are protected through what is considered a public record. So certain things are not public record,
Okay,
personal,
because it
Phone
doesn't
number.
say that, it doesn't say.
Well, you can't, yeah, I think the danger of, what I would suggest, the danger of nitpicking language, you have to look at everything in an entire context, right? Like, you can't just look at it as an isolated, like, situation. There's lots of, like, other things that come into play with a lot of these policies and legislation that, you know, we need, going back to your marijuana one, right? Like, we have policies that dictate that you can't smoke marijuana in school, regardless.
Right.
Whether it's recreational or medicinal, you come to work and you don't pass your drug test, like. So, I mean, there's multiple layers to a lot of this information that we're evaluating here tonight.
what made me think of this was one of the legislative items that was included in this past year's meetings, that somebody had formulated a bill here in the House, I think it was a House bill, that talked about laying out all materials at the beginning of the year, that a teacher would be responsible to do that. And just the downside of that, anybody who's been a teacher knows that, you know, let's say you're doing frog dissection and the frogs didn't come in, you know, we're gonna have to switch gears, we're gonna do something else, or we're doing a virtual dissection, or whatever it might be. It would lock you in if that law had been passed. So, and this is really 500 and some just voters putting together a platform, and, you know, so.
I just don't think it's, I'm not sure that it's worded right.
It's very broad.
It's
I think
very
it's
I'm
broad.
trying to be specific on
It's-
every
it's
line.
meant that way.
And every thought that.
Well, maybe
600
my
or more
fear
than
is that it's
people
not
have.
that way.
I can tell you
Because-
this is coming up in the legislature. It's already been proposed. It came up after our last board meeting. I received the information after that. Parents' Bill of Rights. 2 Republicans submitted that.
And does it propose having all of the curriculum?
No, this one, they should be my legislative report. It's
It's just a
Sure.
summary,
Yes.
so you're not sure whether it would go to that extent.
I have it.
But
I mean-
I have stuff on my phone.
I have
But OSBA hasn't, they didn't support, they can support parental rights without supporting,
Well, if they have something else in their
yeah.
legislative platform that opposes that specific thing, then yeah, they're not gonna lobby for something if they're.
Something not practical,
Right.
right? It's going to limit the ability to educate kids.
I think the gist of it is that parents, if they do have a question, or if they want to ask a question about what their kids are, you know, being taught at school, that they have the ability to know things that are being taught in the classroom, or surveys, or, you know, X, Y, and Z. I think that the gist of it is if parents want to know that the schools are going to be transparent with them and provide the information to the extent that they can, you know.
Well, and I support that, and they already have that under Ohio Revised Code.
Yeah, so it's just,
So-
that's why it says guarantee without having constitution applicable law. So kind of going back to your question about someone's address or phone number, if it's not considered necessarily public record, it wouldn't be something that would be released.
And
Again,
one
so like when a parent asks, typically, right, as an administrator, what happened to the student who did this to my kid? Well, that student, that discipline is protected under FERPA, right? So they don't, you can't share that. So you can say that the student was disciplined appropriately, and, you know, we will continue to monitor the situation and everything else, but you can't say that the student was suspended for 10 days or this, that'd be a violation privacy.
I think that the way it's worded, as broad as it is, it's a slippery slope to constantly, doing lesson plans for a year, to having videotapes in classrooms, all of those things that I feel would make it very hard to do your job.
It doesn't say that in here, that those would be the kinds of things that they'd be looking at, right?
So
But it doesn't say anything, and the things that you felt that it said are things we already have in law. So that's why would we be?
I mean, there's also other different points in here too, that it ensures that all parents will be notified of policies and procedures. I mean, there's a very long list here. All parents should have access to all, instructional materials such as textbooks. I would assume that's upon request, like if they ask, which not every parent is going to do. The school districts cultivate effective communication with parents with expectations and objectives of providing information to parents to support their proper health, safety, and well-being of their children.
And all of those things I support, it's the one line. It's the all, and it sounds to me like that was discussion on the floor, and that was not taken out. Is that how I should understand that? That they
It was
tried to
discussion within the
remove the
debate.
all?
And so the word all in line 413.
I don't know, that it's not real clear what that all means.
It always mentions that word.
Because that first
Here's
line,
the
yes,
law.
all.
So that to me says, if you're not willing to take that out, then there's a reason. I know my concerns with the all.
I don't have anything, which is pretty.
We're all looking at it on the OSBA website.
Which means it's not there. And it's published with the date.
September 1st, 2022.
So that was after when it went to the vote and she passed it.
I know that it came
Motion
back
was passed.
on, wasn't it
That all should have
the
been.
Ohio Board of Education was maybe, that was their discussion to require all materials, all lessons, this is August.
I think it was.
Yeah. And so
They had,
if
so they
OSBA
didn't do it. So,
doesn't, they don't have any power, but they can draw things into the light, so to speak, to share concerns or things that would make it impractical.
So I have a question. If we're looking at this from a teacher perspective, I understand that. But if you're looking at it from a parent perspective, and we're using our taxpayer dollars to, basically allow OSBA, our taxpayer dollars, to lobby for us, we have to really keep in mind what the parents would want. And I think a lot of them would have no problem with the word all, because that's their kids, so they have a right to know if they want to know.
They
So-
have a right to know, and they have that right. They literally have the right.
Well, not in all situations. I mean, we know that there are certain surveys and things like that where they certainly don't. So I think this is just a broad, parents have rights, and we want, if a parent wants to know a specific thing, that they should be given the right to know that thing.
So,
Can I correct something there?
Yeah.
They do have the right to know about surveys.
that's
It's just,
what
I think the question that has been debated is when they have that, when they can see it. I think the concern is before or after, right? Isn't that, because a parent could say, hey, if Susie Q, teacher, asked a pronoun survey question, I'd like to see that survey, they would have to be able to get that survey. It would be after the fact, but it would still be seen by the parent.
Of the survey or the results as well?
Both, public record.
Right,
We'll probably get to that later in our pronouns conversation,
But just, just to be clear,
Yeah,
they
the right
still
is
have,
there.
they still have the ability to get it for their own child. If they wanted to see my child's,
Well,
they couldn't to be protected under.
I guess the other thing I'm questioning is, what do parents feel like they're not getting that they want?
I mean, I think that when you look at certain things that even we have done as a district, there could be things where parents feel like that is not fitting for their morals, values, religious beliefs, whatever you want to call it, and that they should have the right to know about that.
But that's what I'm saying, like specifically, what do parents ask for that they can't get when they ask?
Well, if they don't know that it's happening, then they don't know to even ask for it. So I think that's why this is important, because it's, you know,
We can address.
So it sounds like there's not an issue, but if there were, I guess, I'm just having a hard time grasping what it is that we're denying our parents.
well, do you oppose that, do you not think that parents have a right to know all aspects
Oh,
of
no, not at
students?
all, but I've never had an issue with that. I
It's
mean,
okay,
I
there-
never,
You could be different than other people, we have diverse
I would
parents in
love
our
to know
district.
what our teachers have said, no, you can't have that information. That's what I'm getting
So
at.
then
What
you
have
should,
we denied?
so if you think that you're okay with that, and that they should have access to that, then would you support this?
Yeah.
And if we have Ohio revised code, it kind of seems redundant.
And so I think it's just a reinforcer of parents have rights, and if we're gonna tell our community that we don't support this, that sends a pretty big message to the community.
Well, and I
Just saying,
if-
they're the taxpayers.
I would like to know if a parent asks for something and you're told no, I would like to.
Well, we will later today, because we will have I believe, a discussion around, pronouns and that usage and that kind of stuff too, so.
Okay, let's get back to this. So, the all aspects to me, I think I've been clear, that I'm uncomfortable with the all aspects. I think that it can lead to, exhaustive paperwork. I think it could lead to a lot of time, for staff
I also have
to do these things, and I don't know if it would infringe on privacy. I just don't know what it means. I wish that we had better clarification on it. So I'm okay with everything else except for that word all. So if on the floor, it all goes away, I would support it. If it all stays, I would be supportive.
Yeah, I think that's too broad, and I think the decision-making in education seems a little broad. I mean, I have never questioned administrators and teachers' decision in my child's education. So I think that's a little broad.
And I like that, because I feel like we have trusted companies like Collaborative Classrooms, to provide books, and we all agreed that one book was not fitting, so to
And
just
we
say,
don't.
and just to say that, we can just, we're trusting them, and trust what they're fine, right, so,
Right,
you
and
know,
we verify, and we have put things in place to make parents more comfortable. We've asked teachers to share the book lists with parents and block books. And, if parents have a problem, we want to work with them. Not every parent has an issue with all of it.
no, and I'm just giving that as an
Parents
example
that do.
of why,
We're going to work with them.
and I'm not saying that every parent feels the same way, because they certainly don't. And I'm just giving one specific example,
And
of why parents may feel that way, especially with the better lessons they might happen last year.
understand
We
that.
learned from that as well, right? So
Absolutely.
we can trust to a certain point, but, a lot of parents are the ones who brought up the better lessons thing last year. It wasn't anybody within the administration. So I agree with that, and that's okay if you don't, it's okay.
No,
We're,
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you, but we put things in place. We're not telling teachers or parents, sorry, you gotta deal with it. We put things in place. We put 2 board members on a committee so they can have a say in the books. That's a change we put in place. We've allowed parents to see the book list so that they can vet the books. We're making all kinds of changes to make parents comfortable.
so you agree with that then?
With,
All of it except for the first one?
I don't agree with this, no. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's too broad.
The whole
I
thing?
think it's needed.
Okay. So, Mary's a no.
Are we ready to take a vote?
So I understand, I know that that was a proposal that was made. And
I wouldn't want our legislative platform to look at that and say, this falls under that, and USPO would support that. Because I don't support it, and I don't think we should support it. I don't think it's good for education. I believe parents
So
should.
it's not good for education, but what about the parents?
the parents have every right to know all materials and lessons, but to produce it at the beginning of the year is contradictory to good teaching practice. So you could do it a month at a time, 6 weeks at a time, even a quarter at a time.
In our district, most of the teachers at the elementary level do weekly updates. This is what we're doing, this is what we did this week, this is what we're doing, they have websites. My high school level, they have the calendar out, this is what we're doing. So, I mean, if you want to know, and if what they're showing you isn't clear enough, you can easily make a request, and you can look at any of the curriculum, you can call, so there is transparency. And putting in, I just don't know what would come out of this, and the fact that they wouldn't remove the word all seems, just, to me, it doesn't seem transparent. It seems, I'm not really sure what is happening with that. It could go several directions. So, like if we were looking at the first paragraph, if they took the word all out, sure. The second paragraph, I'm fine with that. The restricts the rights, opposes, I'm fine with that. It's really the one word. So if there was discussion on the floor and that came out, but if there wasn't, my vote is no.
The other thing that I forgot to mention is if this stays in, additions and changes could be made down.
Yes.
And it will be the 400 and, 500 delegates. Well, if somebody has to be a member and represented to vote that day, but, so let's say it was 500 even, that dilutes any one vote, then you get the aggregate of the many. And I think we all agree that the spirit of that is excellent and what we're all trying to promote and have. But based on those other pieces of legislation, proposed legislation or action by the Ohio Board of Education in regard to those specifics, to try to produce it at the beginning of the year is impractical.
I get your opinion on that, but it doesn't say that, so I guess, we're all kind of, I feel like we've all said what we need to say, so I'm a yes, but, I know you are a no, at least that's how it's written now. Jimmy.
As long as you take out the word all.
Well, we can't take it out.
But if they just.
That'll happen at the legislature.
If it happens on the floor,
Then
we could support it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, if it's not
Because you
written,
said
then
it is gone from your,
The way it's written, it says right here, it's weird. It says, so the motion passed, why did we have to do that?
yeah, that's what I don't know.
That's what it says.
Yeah, because that would have, this is an electronic document. 3 keystrokes and it's fixed.
maybe it was an oversight.
Yeah, so we'll assume that we are supporting it, if they put the all back.
Tom, you didn't say you support it or not, though.
I supported it.
Okay.
I-
But I want us to just talk about getting your input.
When laws and regulations and everything start out, it's really tough to get down into supposition. If those people like Ginny, who can get that detail, they're not participants. Lawmakers can't even get down to that, so they turn it over to the lawyers. So, I don't know anybody, well, I know a few of the names on the committee who put this together. Things come up after things are written. Laws get amended. policies get changed, just as we do here with our policy book, right? So if you can't cover everything in the first policy, do you not do something because it isn't perfect? Do we work towards perfection to get it passed, or do we get it passed? Do we settle on 60% of the voters saying, yes, all is good? So do we say the 40% who said all is bad, we don't do it?
Well, it'll pass. If 60% say, no, it's fine
Yeah.
with it all in there, it's gonna pass. We're just giving you some feedback so that when you represent our point of view, there's opportunity for a question to be asked, because this is a new policy.
Yeah, and it's growing across the nation. Growing across the nation. I couldn't find out my phone, but
So are we for this? How did we?
As written, it's,
just the word all is the
Yeah,
exception.
if it's, because it looks like it's passed.
As is, I can't speak to whether it's going to get changed or not. As of right now, the way you're either saying you're against the resolution.
So as it is, we're saying that.
No, it's like, as is, don't say with qualifications, because it's a cop-out.
We're saying that.
It's either all or none. You say,
Well, you could
the word all
certainly
is
ask
in,
why
none of this goes
the
over.
motion wasn't reflected in this text. You could ask that.
yes, please get that clarification.
I'll ask
Yeah,
what that
because
means.
we want to support it. We don't want to throw out the whole thing. It's that specific concern.
Well, I know one of the individuals out, I can tell you his name, I can call him personally and ask him. His name is on here. Let me see.
That was Susie.
I don't know Susie, I know. individuals.
Are we talking about 412 through 430?
No, just that one word in the first paragraph. All.
No, we're talking about this whole thing.
Right, because it'll be voted on this one, I guess.
But you want clarification as of.
Did they follow the
Did they take
motion?
it out?
Yeah.
Because like 413 still going to have all of it.
There could be an error and then we're
So
also.
I would, yeah, get clarification on that, because then I guess it is.
There's the word all.
If they
It's
take
an
it
error.
out.
I'm gonna have some,
For sakes alive.
So are we, is there anything else, like going, this document is 56 pages long, are there, I mean,
There's two, we're only.
that, yeah, that was really the only one I had.
That was
I
the
don't
only
know.
one I would strongly support. The
So
rest
we
of them,
could
I went
really-
through and I said, yeah, that's not okay. Do I personally not want the letter grade staying up? Yes, I do, but I think one person argued
I just think it's huge, so.
the letter grades.
Right, that was the only one that
Same. Anybody else? Or stuff I know?
Nothing on the other document.
There's the lottery and sports game.
So I mean,
Just wording.
Public funds.
the rest I can see.
there was some revisions that had to change.
Yeah.
That was a big new one.
Well, that's a good one. Go to the,
Oh, sorry.
go to the lottery.
Don't put the camera on.
This would be.
I'm trying to do that.
I don't know what line it is.
The lottery one?
Lottery, yeah.
So they're
Things that were submitted in this.
About lottery funds, using them, said is there a time?
You don't want a lottery?
that you can't
These were the.
Advertisements, promotions.
And this is what's on. What's asking here.
that you can't, reduce public funding if you
Show that.
have that.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
So just add sports gaming money, because that's gonna be legalized here soon.
just, you can't replace public funding with that, you can add it to public funding, so I'm fine with that.
Everybody good? Side note, will we be getting, I've never gone to the conference, obviously. Will we be getting some kind of information on, you know, how that works?
The app,
There's an app?
yeah, it's very thorough, you'll get a book too, but the app is really nice because you can pick sessions. It'll show you every segment of the
Yeah.
day, what sessions are available. And
No, I got that, but I read like eating and stuff, like, I don't know. I just,
we kind of just meet.
email on that? So
Yeah.
Mr. Heath is going to coordinate
Okay.
a week full of festivities for all, you know.
He's got a grill in his car.
That's what I was thinking, you know, that's it.
Yeah, some of the logistics, I know Missy's already got worked
Okay.
out, so, we'll get something put together.
Perfect.
I've got that on my notes here too, just to make sure that we've got all the,
There's
details
yeah.
and logistics worked out.
So,
We also try to divide up, if it's possible, so let's say there's 5 different sessions, and 3 of us wanna go to that session, we might peel off and pick up another one, so we can share that information, so we get a better cross-section of the topics. And we do try to, where if we have representatives, usually.
yeah, there's,
We have presenters or just in the students?
oh, no, we have people in student achievement.
Student achievement. I
No, we
know.
don't have.
We don't have any presenters.
No, I don't believe we have any presenters, we've got, some students in the.
We have presenters, which are.
So Missy will send out like the information, give us
Yeah.
okay.
And I'll put that on my notes here.
Thanks.
And last year, one of our teachers presented, it was very nice. It's nice to see her.
Anything else under capital conference?
You know, I just wanted to say that, you know, when we voted as a delegate, this is just kind of a point, I'm not sure if everybody heard this story, but, when we voted as for the delegate, I misheard Mrs. Briner, and I thought that she had said, I'm not interested if someone else wants to go. And so when I didn't realize that she was willing to go again, and, you know, as she's our president, I have every faith that she would be able to carry out the duties of the delegate that she's done for many years, so I apologize for that. And when, so it was certainly not a lack of faith when I didn't, throw my support there. However, I have every faith that Mr. Tuttle will be a great delegate for us. He has been on board for 3 years, and, you know, he's fair and thoughtful with it, and I support him as well. I just, you know, I didn't want to make it seem like I wasn't, that I had lack of faith in our president. I don't, but I know Mr. Tuttle will be great. I appreciate that.
We're having fun.
Yes.
Did you want to have a word?
Yeah, so a couple things with board policies, just as a starting point. I know last time we had conversation around Neola and doing a broad overview of our board policy manual and doing some adjustments and shifting potentially to that Neola platform. Bill and I have received the very, very lengthy contracts. So we're reading through all of these pieces now just to make sure that the agreement is to our liking. I haven't noticed anything in my first perusal of it. But we're gonna make sure we do our due diligence with the contract, just to make sure that we're comfortable with it before we bring that to you. We are hopeful that we'll have that ready to go for our regular November 8th meeting, though. Unless there are any other comments, discussions.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So when we get the policies from Neola, will we be able to see what we had versus what we're going to get? And will we be voting on those, like, changes? Or is it just, you know, just let's swap these, here you go? Like, how do?
Are you talking like just from the initial, or when we get the updates, like once we
The
adopt
initial,
the
the initial.
I think I can answer that question. I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna give us their policies with the options for us to select.
Okay, and that would.
Because he said
include-
rather than going through line by line, he said it would be not efficiently effective, it's because we were long overdue for a total overhaul, is to go through, read their policies, you know, see what aligns to what our practice currently is, make those selections as we go through the first time.
And then would we vote on that as a board, or is it just switched out? Like, who
No, everything, all that policy has to be word for
It will be
word.
word.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see each policy that gets changed or gets added.
You'll see each policy.
Our version, existing, new version.
No, you'll see the proposed policy that we're proposing, because whether we have it or not.
Do we have any policies that we wrote specifically for us? We do, right?
Sure we do. That'll be part of the,
So how will those be addressed?
that would be as we evaluate the policies per section. I'll just like use mine, for example. I'll go through the ones that they have in their 800 section, which is the finance section, compared to what we have in our finance section versus some other areas that I know financial policies have been sprinkled throughout. And just kind of review, make sure that we have, at a minimum, what we currently have, is to see if there's anything else we want to add. And then kind of look at what we're doing, and look at what we have. But to more so kind of look at even the standard policies that they think that every district should have in finance. Going through, kind of looking through what we have in there.
How about the other policies?
Like from all the other chapters, basically. Yeah, we'll go, excuse me, through the same process. We'll take those templates that Neola gives us. If there are any policies that we currently have that are not included in there, we'll make sure that we address those, whether or not they need to be in there. We can get some legal input from them as well. Say, here's a policy that we currently have.
I would find it hard to believe, from experience, that there's gonna be something that's new and that.
Well, anything we may have that you, well, let's strike that.
Yeah.
We don't need that. Will we, collectively, board members, have the opportunity to see those that are struck out?
Yes, because what happens when we send a draft, when you do it in the system, it shows what we selected and what we struck out.
We'll be able to see that
Yeah.
system, line by line.
Yeah.
One other question. Did we, I don't recall, did we consider OSBA's?
We did.
And again, one of the issues with OSBA's policies is that they don't have the administrative guidelines, which I think are gonna be vitally important as we move forward too, just from a practice standpoint.
Because we don't get that now. So it'd be a nice addition
Yeah.
to figure out how to implement any of those policies.
And for us to do like an overhaul, let's say we do Neola or OSBA, because I know the cost is $26,500 or so, $2,500 a year, something like that. You don't have to quote me,
Yeah.
but I know
I
those
think
are
you're pretty
general.
close, yeah, 2,400.
Okay, so what's the cost difference if we were to stay with who we have and do like a whole review?
To be honest, I didn't want.
Okay. It would just be interesting, like if it was 5,000 versus 26,000, I would like to see that difference, but
It doesn't have the administrative.
I understand that part of it. And I do like that the administrative guidelines are out there for the public to view, because then it's giving a little bit more of a dive in, here's the policy, but this is really,
Here's our
you know,
practice.
what we're gonna write, what's attached to that policy. So I do like that aspect of it.
I bet it
The
this also similar to if you had a small house and you added on to it? What would you do with that amount of square footage if you were building it all in a unified way? That's how I look at using Neola, if you're getting all of those policies and they're created in a cohesive group rather than a little bit here, a little bit there. And some policies, I mean, we've had updates that go in or over the, you know, give us so that the language is out of whack, but, you know, just kind of doing it so that there's consistency and it's well coordinated over all of those bigger topics makes a lot of sense.
The administrative guidelines just seem like they add such another level of transparency. Like, this is the policy, and this is how it's being applied, right?
And another level checks and balances.
Great. So I do like that part of it. So when we, I know we're not there yet, but when we get to the public participation policy that we put together, and it looked like Secretary to like Chardon, Chasnola, and Riverside, it looks like a lot of that is already, so if we go with this, then we could easily, okay. So I'm probably jumping ahead, but. I was just doing an intro.
Maybe open more shadow.
So again, then we will take one more look at the contract just to make sure we're comfortable with it. We'll have that ready to go for the November 8th board meeting. Any other questions, concerns there? And again, thank you for the discussion on all that too. I think this will be a big step for us. So public participation policy then, again, I shared with, and let me see if I can pop this up there real quick. Bill, no comments on how many tabs I have open, please?
You've never seen my laptop.
That's pretty impressive, that's a lot.
Yeah. Same one.
Okay, good.
That's how I know what I gotta get done. The virtual sticky notes.
And the sad thing is, I know exactly where everything is on here too. It's just like, oh yeah, it's this one. So what I had shared with you is basically taking what our current board policy is, and I try to mirror the way Neola does their updates as well, so that you can see that, and hopefully everybody out there can see this as well. So anything that's just in our regular black font is what our current board policy says. You can see that the first two paragraphs have stayed the same. Anything that would be deleted from our current policy is highlighted in red with a strike through. So really those two paragraphs are things that either we just don't do that currently, or are encompassed in some of the new language that we'll see here shortly. So those two would be taken out. We have the regular pieces here that would stay, but then this is where we get into some of those new proposals that I had suggested at our last board work session. So taking out that initial part of B, and then putting in the green font as anything that is new language that would be brought to that particular policy. So again, that's the way Neola would present that to us so that we knew what those changes were. So again, letter B here now would read: the board limits public participation of residents of the school district, parents or guardians of the student in the district, employees in the district, individuals with a business ownership in the district, or elected/appointed public officials whose jurisdiction includes the school district. So that would be letter B in our policy. Attendees, letter C, attendees must register their intention to participate in public participation portion of the meeting prior to the start of the meeting so as to be recognized at the appropriate time by the presiding officer. The individuals may not register others to speak during public participation. The only change here with our language is that instead of letter C, that's now going to be letter E for the next paragraph. The next paragraph, same thing, goes from letter D to letter F. We keep the first part of this. And then having the second part included in there. So any questions must be addressed to the presiding officer. That is crossed out. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Letter E is now letter G. Letter F is now letter H. And again, just pulling out that part that says, and has received written approval from the superintendent prior to the board meeting, and agrees to all of that other stuff. Just pulling out that piece. Why go through that step right now? Bill and I have talked about this too. Anytime we have a public meeting, we assume that it's going to be recorded in some fashion. So let's just pull that off the table, and whoever wants to show up and record our meetings can record our meetings. Letter G was just a little bit broad, and this kind of gives us a little bit more. And I think we talked about some of these pieces to the puzzle previously as well. This would be letter I. So the presiding officer has the right and power to control the meeting and may take. We used to have whatever actions are necessary to ensure an orderly meeting. This is just specific as to what those steps might be. And again, this is a pretty common thing in the majority of policies that are out there in the state right now. So those 4 or 5 actions, I think, or 5, just very specific as to, what our presiding officer is able to do. And then coming out of our conversations last time, a couple of the notes that we had there, and again, we don't have administrative guidelines yet, but one of the things that I would suggest for our practice here as a board, if a participant asks a question during their statement to the board and in public participation, if we don't specifically have that written down, we can ask for clarification. And then prior to the next meeting, if I have some statements that I can make, we would try to address those concerns or those questions that were asked previously.
And the fact that the individual have given a sense of what their concern is, it'll make it much easier to follow up if answers or information are needed.
Yeah, you're able to answer it.
Yeah, if it's something we're prepared to answer, obviously we'll do that. If there's something a little bit more complex, we want to make sure that we do our due diligence and research and have a good quality answer.
So
Well, be completed.
the, number 3, scroll down, form, sorry.
To the form
The
itself.
form, yeah.
Okay, so before we jump into the form, are there any questions policy-wise?
I do have questions as well.
Okay.
So, do you want to go on that
You want to
first,
go to the
or?
form first?
Sure, it doesn't matter.
So.
They're not crazy questions, I just have.
Yeah, no worries. So the other thing that we included in here for you is just a sample of what that participation form might look like. That is based off of what the policy reads. So just having the person have their name, and then what category from those 5 that we have, are they a resident, are they a parent or guardian, employee, individual of a business, with a business ownership, or an elected official, just so that we have that information. And then number 3, we had the topic to be discussed included in there. So that was the sample form. All right.
So the first one I just had, just a couple questions. So the public participation form, I know I had emailed you about, I prefer for the form to, for the topic item, because I feel like if somebody, forgets, they have 5 different things that they wanna speak on, and they forget the 5th one, and then they go to speak, and then we start gabbling them, because they switch that 5th topic and it's not in their form, I feel like that's just a bit restrictive. Also, if, I've seen other board meetings where they do this, where you have to sign up in the beginning, but there are people who may sign up and then say pass, because they sign up because they know something's on the agenda that they're, wanting to see what we say, or,
And it gets addressed, so they don't want.
yeah, so they don't want to talk about it, or something is brought up during the regular meeting and they want to speak at the end, but they don't really know if they're gonna speak or not. I think it's just a little restrictive. I understand the purpose of it, but for those kind of different scenarios, I wouldn't want to tell somebody, well, you didn't put it on the form, so you can't speak, I don't want to make it hard.
I don't think it says that you can't, but I think it's helpful to help an individual speaker to kind of frame their topic of concern. Because I would even like to add, if you have a possible solution that you would like to propose, I would be delighted to have that kind of feedback. And I think it also helps with follow-up. So, so-and-so has a few minutes and speaks. If you still have 5 topics and you can squeeze them into 3 minutes, go for it. But I mean, if a person added something in addition, I'm not as concerned about that. But I'd like to have some, chance to kind of know what they hoped to address.
So maybe,
How would you know that? You're not gonna get this little paper that's gonna say.
No, Bill's gonna have
But he's not gonna announce that to
No.
you, to us.
it. No, but
So
it
it's
helps
gonna be-
with the follow-up, I think.
I think Annie has a good point there. I mean, we don't want to make it so
So restricted.
restrictive. What we could just do is in practice, and I don't know, this would be an administrative practice, then, as long as they sign up, you could kind of outline what topics you're discussing, but we wouldn't stop them. No, you didn't say this, I wouldn't imagine we would.
so maybe we could put
Just put the word optional on
optional on there,
there. And
that
then
they,
include
have
the
checkbox.
possible solution with optional.
yeah, I'm
on there
okay
as
with
well.
that, yeah, full
Did-
optional.
And again, I think in my response to you too, Andy, the reason that topic was included on a lot of the registration forms that are out there is they also, in those board meetings, had a cap, which we're not including in our proposals right now. That way, if a certain number of people signed up to speak in public participation and the time limit had expired, it allowed the administration to be able to respond to that question or that topic to that particular person after the meeting, even though they weren't able to bring that up in the public speaking portion. So again, proposals then would be to put the word optional here for the topic to be discussed, and then putting down maybe a number 4 with possible solutions with word optional next to that as well.
We understand that we're not limiting them to the topics.
Yes, it's just optional.
And
Sure.
that's,
Even
and
if
like,
they
do
list
that
it,
way,
yeah.
and ensure
Even if
that-
they listed
Right.
it, we would stop.
Solution to,
whatever the
There's
topic
whatever,
or concern that we're bringing up. Because I've got actually a couple of really good emails here this week from community members that brought up a concern, and then, again, it was around transportation. And said, what about this or this? And well, ironically enough, I've got 2 meetings that are coming up this week where transportation is included in the agenda, and I said, I'm gonna lead with that for both of those, so
I think
it'll be a good conversation to have.
well, as long as we don't edit or remove people's comment, that we have 3 people speaking to the same topic.
I think one of the reasons why declaring a topic was a good idea was to stop it back. You want a person to have a.
We talked about this last time.
But that was why that was proposed, so that you don't have somebody who's diverting their attention to others in the audience who may have spoken or there or whatever, that they're, addressing the board, the president specifically.
Oh, we have that rule.
But this would be.
We're speaking to that, right? What the presiding officer can do to
True.
that,
True.
address the conversation.
That's where if we have, just, I think just the topic stated, and it doesn't have to be limiting, but just to give the person a chance to kind of gather their thoughts so they can share what they want us to know. It's a good thing.
I understand the reason for it, I feel like it's the optional set.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, we can see how this works as we're going through, and if there's need to, as Tom mentioned earlier, if there's a need to adjust the practice or adjust the wording, we can do that in a way. It's a good
Yeah.
first step.
And I think, I had a couple other
Yeah.
questions.
Please.
So I know the line where it says it's repetitive or obscene, I think from our previous conversation that we all had, as a board, we kind of wanted to make sure we were all on the same page as to what does that look like? Because I think we all have different ideas of obscene, and I think it offensive or offensive, right? So, but offensive to who? Because we're 5 people. Something that offends you may not offend me. Something that offends me may not offend you. So I think we need to have a discussion about what does that really look like in practice. Repetitive. I mean, I don't really get why that's in there because I don't care if people repeat themselves 3-4 times as long as they're not being obscene while doing it. I think that's fine.
It could be 3 people speaking for the same thing. So
We're
you can
not
stop the third
limiting-
one.
we're not limiting, yeah, at all.
So repetitive is
When we
Doesn't apply to
consider
us.
striking that.
I would,
And-
yeah.
That's
not applicable.
The other thing that's gonna be difficult about that is freedom of speech, you know, and again, it speaks to what's offensive to one may not be to another.
And do we have the word offensive in here?
No,
Don't we have
just
the word obscene?
Obscene. So I guess we need to talk about what does obscene look like? Because, I mean,
Can we list all the words?
right, I mean, but seriously, like there's some, because we have to stay consistent, we can't, yell at somebody and say, you can't have this, but then
Sorry,
somebody else could,
right.
talk to, we have to be consistent with whatever we decide is obscene, we have to apply it universally.
And I've been getting it from both sides. So
how could we-
I'm not making either side go. I get the finger pointed at both sides. You should have warned that person, and you should have warned that person, and you're playing favorites with this one, and you're not with that one, and
And again, that, to my comments last time, too, and this is not something where we can leave, Mary Reiner out to dry on this. I think we need to hold everybody accountable around the table, and if there's some sort of, sign or word that we say, hey, can we stop for a second, have a conversation about, the direction that this public participation is heading, and move from there. And I think it needs to be all of us around the table holding each other accountable to it too.
then we've got the audience yelling out, and then
So could we say, make comments that use obscene language
Or, what if we just,
constitute a true
I'm saying
threat?
Two.
I can't.
Twos. You
It's
can't
more
define.
offensive
It's
than
obscene.
obscene. That's what I'm hearing.
well, I guess,
Again, who's offended?
I think aggressive language, something like
Okay,
that.
how do you
Aggressive,
define aggressive?
loud,
Okay,
offensive,
so if
aggressive,
someone is being loud.
deemed by the presiding
Stop.
officer or the sergeant at
Okay,
arms.
so you've got a person who's talking quietly and controlled, but they're offensive. And that's okay.
what about if we make rules around race, religion, race, religion, gender, anything that's, we would have to target it, but I guess I wouldn't want anybody going out there and saying,
So if someone reads a Bible verse, is that allowed or no?
well, see, that's tough,
Okay,
because that's
that's
freedom of
realistic.
speech, and that's, I mean like targeting,
This is getting hard.
yeah, I mean like targeting people. So if you get somebody up there who's going to use language that's targeting somebody's race, or saying, you know, if you are of this sexual orientation, you're this, and applying a label to them, I don't think that's great. I think both ways it's wrong, whether it's race, religion, you know, if you're Christian, you're this, if you're Muslim, you're this. I don't think that kind of speech is helpful. Now, can we completely stop it? I don't know, but I think there should be some kind of decorum, right? Where we say, excuse me, you know, Mr. Whoever, can you please use language that is, you know, I don't know, appropriate for this meeting and this setting, you know, because we don't want our meetings to get out of control, but they have been, and you know, many occasions. So I don't know that this is going to fix that with the way it's worded. I don't know if there's different language we can use, or, because it is hard, and to Mary's defense, I think it would be very tough to decide who to say stop and who not to. Especially if you know that person too, it makes it even more difficult, so. I don't
There's
know.
aggressive speaking, you know,
No,
the
see.
strong authoritative.
You're
If
talking.
there's something, shout. They yell, they scream, they point their fingers. They need to be told, take a time out,
See,
bring it
tone,
down.
I don't think tone has anything to do with it.
No, some shout at
I
us.
don't think that's.
At us. They're supposed to be talking to the presiding officer, not to each one of us, the presiding officer. And yelling,
Or
See, I think that's
demanding
gotten
a
better.
response,
I think that's gotten better.
demanding a response when it was made
well, we
clear.
can't wait for things to get better. When it happens, that's when it has to be addressed. If we don't speak to it then it continues.
We've also got
The
the,
speakers need to be told what we will tolerate. We want their input. We want them to speak to the presiding officer. And don't ask questions of all the other board members. And don't ask Mr. Heath or Mr. Wade questions. It's to speak to the presiding officer.
I know,
Take the
there's still
questions,
issues
write
like
it down, ask their name, get the question, we'll move forward on that. But the yelling at us is not the way we should conduct our meetings. We don't yell at each other, and we don't yell at the audience.
And we still.
We
have
res-
audience.
We expect respect.
So how, do you have any, how would you work it?
How do we put that in words?
The presiding officer is responsible to address those who get, whatever you want to call it, out of line, loud,
So that would be
offensive.
obscene, or agreeing that that would be obscene. Because I also think that people don't yell that they're using racial slurs or labeling people for their, you know, race, religion, gender, whatever, you know, the scenario. I think that's,
Well, I think the easy one to start with is if they bring up a specific student or staff member.
that's, you know.
Right,
Right.
that, anytime that happens, that should be, that'd be a prime example of something that we would shut down.
And that would apply to,
That's our guys' rule.
That was already in our current policy.
Yeah.
and that wouldn't even be by a specific name. They don't need to name the person that they insinuate.
Yeah.
The person who teaches this, or the person who is a fourth grader and Hopkins.
Because the concerns should be broad, should be more general, right? Give a specific term, you should be contacting the program district administrator to get it addressed
Right.
there.
Didn't have a statement.
And then if it doesn't get addressed, there's steps in place to go up the chain of command, and if it doesn't get addressed by the superintendent and CFO, the person has the right to make a complaint to the board president. And we have policy in place for that.
And that,
But to your point that you had here tonight, the question is going to be tone and content.
Right, free speech. then.
Because each president, each president's going to interpret that differently.
yes.
And we've already had people making assertions that, you know, they have the right to say what they want to say. speech. So that's another wrinkle.
They can, but there could be a consequence that they might be shut down, they could be asked to leave, you know, I mean, there's, again, we kind of talk about that at the meeting, we keep track of the meetings, but, see what I did there? Yeah, you're welcome. Or remember next Tuesday, we have another one. That there, you know, there's things that we can, the board has to be able to conduct their business, and if someone is not abiding by the rules, the presiding officer is the one in control of that. But I think that the piece of it with regards to other members who feel that something has been crossed, saying Madam President or Mr. President, and interrupting the speaker to catch the attention of the board president, to Craig's piece of, we're all in this together, I think is going to take that, because you're trying to, it's like managing a classroom, right? Like you kind of got a classroom that's a little bit disruptive, and we gotta kind of get back under control. It's gonna take the entire board to kind of do that.
So we could, I think one of us feel like a speaker is speaking in a harassing or obscene manner, we can say that President, you know, I feel like the speaker is speaking in an obscene manner.
Yeah, I think that, you could say, I think this is something that we're trying to address or discuss for our new policies. Again, this isn't gonna happen at earliest until January, right? So it could be, any Bible deal, right? So it'd be, you know, this is something that, isn't this something we're trying to control?
We could certainly implement the spirit of this with a
Right.
formal policy.
That's what I was thinking, that's why.
So we don't have to wait until January for this to change, because it's really not a change. It's just a clarification of what we wanted to do. Because I think
The enforcement of the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
it's been very difficult because our community's reputation, the students that we serve in our district are, you know, friends and neighbors, are observers of all of it. And because we keep our meetings posted online, you know, people can revisit those, and sometimes it's been a very unflattering life.
Well, let's not cast blame on everybody who sits in the audience.
No.
Let's accept some of the responsibility. When we don't respond to them, when they ask questions, we don't get back to them the next month. So the one issue kept coming back every month. She got aggressive, she stormed up, stormed back in. And furthermore, this is what I believe. I can't see anybody's face out in the audience. And they may see me because the lights on me and everything, and I'm smiling. There's some people out there that perhaps if they sat near us, just like they're doing today, and if they speak, we'll see their face. Not that they'll feel, you know, oh, I can't let them see my face. It's like, that brings the conversation to personal and not, what is it, 100 feet to their speaker's mic, and you got this tiny little head, I can't see.
We are moving back to Parental, right? As of
Yeah.
January,
Yes.
so.
We need to be a Parental.
Well, and the other thing is, some people you can't hear, especially depending on how loudly they're speaking, if they're
Right.
speaking into the microphone. So I don't always hear every word that's spoken.
I don't either, I miss,
So I can't
I go back
always
and watch
hear
this.
every obscene comment that's made.
I think that we did talk about this last month, and you brought it up again, Tom, and I think it's worthwhile to bring it, the need to address, like somebody just say, the person, I heard your question, we have your question down to this. For Craig and I to be allowed to answer questions that fit into our purview, then, like, in my previous life, it was very rare that I didn't address and interact with the community when I was sitting at the table. We have a different decorum here, I understand that, and I can appreciate that, but I think at a minimum, acknowledging the question and saying that we'll get an answer back and summarizing those questions at the end by somebody, and then Craig and I addressing them in the next meeting, at a minimum, is a good first step.
And another line could be there. a suggestion. If they have a question, put in there, what's your question? If they've thought it out prior to it, let's put a line down there. You want them to pick the topic, ask question, optional, you know. There's your question, what's your,
Question.
and then it's written down, and we got a form.
It might be nice to have an email address or
Right.
a phone number, or so
So
we
we
say
follow up with them.
immediately follow
Don't
up.
we have to know that we're gonna, at the next board meeting, we're gonna answer questions at the beginning?
Yeah,
Well,
but
some
there,
people might want an email follow-up or a phone call.
yeah, it could be
So
something.
I agree.
you could
Yeah.
write
So
it
do
down.
both then? Because I
possible.
like doing both, if we're gonna do that, I think it needs to be said in the public, because while people are listening to other people's questions, they may be like, oh yeah, me too, and then we could figure out, repeat it the next month, maybe they're gonna speak then on it, because they don't know the answer. So,
But, for example, the flag and the pledge question that came up, being able to respond to that to everybody that was sitting in that last meeting would be appropriate
Yeah.
as well. So,
Some
if
questions
they
might be
email
more
potentially, and then topic and question also included, but again, an optional piece there.
Question is a separate line.
So topic / question to be discussed?
Topic, or leave it blank, and what's your question? Do you have a question?
Or
One topic, I think it could be both.
You know.
Yeah, we might be making a statement.
I'm just trying to work to a piece of paper.
Oh,
It would have been
2-inch
Six
screen.
months.
3.
5 minutes.
I have a question though, because we were talking, the last meeting, we kind of talked a little bit about an electronic form as well, if people are like running late, or I got dropped my kid off at 7, I'll be at the meeting at 7:15. And they, want to talk about something. Well, actually, I just thought of something else though too. What is this for on agenda items or at the end on everything?
But again, I didn't put it in, or include that in here, if.
'Cause we're gonna call
we want
up,
to do that
right?
and actually have, if we still have the 2 sections of
Yeah.
public participation, or if we just want to go to one and have it all done at the beginning, because then it can be on or off. I've seen, I through previous districts just had one and it was on any item that was on or off the agenda.
So I think we need to clarify
Or
that.
if we're gonna keep the 2, we would go ahead and have that on the participation form as well. But again, that could be.
Yeah, my preference is most sections,
keep it.
Yeah,
the open being on topics on the agenda.
the beginning.
Speak at the end, you have a question on some other issue. This is no giver.
So maybe I'll put that in as number 3, bump topic / question to number 4, and then number 5, and possible solution. And have those last 2 pieces as optional.
And then if somebody is running late, they can email, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you can, I mean, you can sign, you can do the form, we put the form on the website
I like that
so
idea.
that they
Like
can,
the form on the
Yeah.
website, because then it's standard, it'll be the same information.
correct.
Because
Then
then
we
they
can
can-
print that out, and have it at the meeting, anyone who doesn't want to do that, then they can get there early,
Yeah.
7, or 7 o'clock. Perfect.
So we put in the phone number on here too, just so we can.
That's what anything on there.
What's the sequence that we're gonna, is it random? We're gonna call people up randomly?
They get a big,
You're gonna get, yeah. Pull it out.
We'll do alphabetical, so we'll put A in there first.
Yeah.
A, Sam.
So just random, we're just gonna, okay,
yeah,
alright, cool.
I'll fix them up.
Craig, under parent or guardian, did you consider putting in what school their kids are in?
We hadn't put that down, I know that was, I believe, part of one of the, if I go back to what our language was.
Kind of touching on that, what was the thought with students' name, students' address? Is that just to confirm that the students were district?
And again, for those parents of students that don't live in the district, so that we know that the students actually live ours.
Split parenting.
That is a good question though. Some people might be a little
They might
nervous to
still
put
put
down
their
their
names
student's
on there
name.
to- So, because right now we don't have them stand up and say,
Right.
my daughter is having little, we just say her memorial. So,
So we can get rid of student's name, do we still want the student's
I think
address,
that
just to
address
make
is
sure that
fine.
it's here?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put the school instead of the.
Oh, yeah, we can put the student's school.
Yes, that way we know that they're in the school, because that's what we're asking them to do now, see what school the kids are at.
Got it.
In 5.1, that rises to a pretty high level and would allow pretty aggressive speech if it didn't seem to constitute a true threat, meaning seriously harmed by, you know, I mean, that's
Yeah,
like, wow. Like,
it's,
I mean, I would say that when I look at this right now, as we've taken out repetitive, it says it's sin, and then true threat.
I would just
We
say
wouldn't
threats.
stop anyway, because, you know, so if we're trying to control comments at all, or to deal with the comments, I'm not sure that we do it in the way it's written.
Yeah, I thought, you know, even, something,
Harassing language.
yeah, so,
Well, harassing's
so
repetitive.
that's the other
So like,
piece of the puzzle.
if you look at the true definition of harassment, like, you have to do it repeatedly.
same with bullying.
Well, I thought bullying was harassing was different.
No, they're all, yeah, but like, it wouldn't just be one time that you would say,
Cause you could be obscene or just a jerk, right? That doesn't necessarily mean I'm harassing them, I come every day, and I do the same
you
things.
would dial it back, yeah.
Say with a smile, it still would be harassing.
Not aggressive.
Aggressive would be
Aggressive.
So I guess what Tom was trying to get at too,
Yeah.
the tone and kind of.
Aggressive, because that would be content or tone.
So we get rid of the word harassing here, that
Aggressive.
was a different district that used that.
I'm not saying I'm not against harassment, but there was questions about the word repetitive, and it's,
Yeah.
harassing one was.
Didn't talk, we spoke about it, but I'm not sure where we landed, like limiting if someone was addressing concerns about a specific staff member or a specific student.
Yeah, and that's in our current policy language, so if you look up. Find where that is. Yeah, it's right here.
I mean, if people have concerns, we want to hear them, but
Yeah.
there's a different format for that. I
Yeah,
guess.
other channels provided for board consideration and disposition of legitimate complaints involving individual employees of the district.
No, it says for any person connected with the school system, so would that be treated the same way, with, you know, if people are writing in about somebody who's connected with the school system, we would then listen and respond back to them, like we would if it was a, you know, employee of the district, so that it's not during public commentary,
That's the way it reads right now.
and if we don't respond, what's their next step then? To ask,
So how does that define a person connected?
Yeah.
That's not an employee, would it? Would it be?
oh, it's here.
A student.
Volunteer.
Volunteer, okay.
I think it should be more explicit.
yeah. Or what?
More explicit, actually say student, rather than person associated with the district, or I say personnel, because it would say
Yeah.
students.
So here then. It's about school personnel
Or
or
students.
students.
You see,
It's hard.
but you're not complaining about a student. You should, we're saying wholeheartedly, you shouldn't talk about a specific student, right? I mean,
Yeah, or teacher.
Yeah. Like, you shouldn't use you shouldn't be specific. If you come to the board to speak at a board meeting, it should be a general concern about staff as a whole, or the handbook, not that I saw Tyler Wade walking around with shorts on, you know what I mean, like, it's, I have a concern that the handbook's not being enforced.
Otherwise, they should email.
Correct.
And that's a chain of command thing too, it shouldn't be, start with the superintendent superintendent or CFO, or could be board. It should be the principal, the teacher, the principal, and there.
Again, because, yeah, the public comment section is for the community to speak about issues that they have, or anything really related to the school system, right? I mean, so if there's specific concerns, they should be doing that in an appropriate chain of command.
And so if it's somebody who's connected to the school system, they're not employed by the school system, and people are emailing in, then we would have to respond. Otherwise, they have no other chain of command, because they can't come and speak about it at the board meeting.
Well, that would always have been true though, so let's say. the
Yeah, I guess
boss
that kind of
in our
goes
place-
to that situation, like, let's say I emailed Mr. White, the high school principal, about a concern, and then he didn't, and then I go to Mr. Hammond, or then I go to Mr. Heath, and then if Mr. Heath doesn't address it, then it's an issue with Mr. Heath. Then he or she would then go to the board president, for our policy, as we know, and say, I'd like to discuss this with the board executive session.
So that even somebody who's connected to the school, if they're not getting their answers via email, they would be able to bring it up to us and request an executive session.
If it's, well, it has to rise to a complaint against the
Right, I'm saying if
CFO,
we are not
sure, yeah.
responding to emails
Yeah.
about it. I had one other question. The way that this reads, if you go all the way up to the top, and then the first paragraph, and it says, so that the board may have an opportunity to hear comments, suggestions, and concerns of the public in an effort to inform citizens in advance of matters to be considered at the Board of Education meeting. Advance notice of all regular and special meetings will be provided to the community media. It's not really clear in here if we allow public commentary at special meetings or not. And I know there are some places like Chardon, I don't know if you know, maybe, but Chardon does allow public participation at special meetings only on agenda items. So whatever we decide, I think should be clarified in here.
We can say regular. That would be another meetings, and that eliminates special meetings. If we wanted to add it, we can always do that, but it wouldn't be an expectation. Would that be better?
I wouldn't mind it, but I just want it to be clear, so that the public understands
Get rid of the word that.
when we have it, when we don't.
Monthly, and then it says whether there's issues regular.
Just say regular. Because regular
Everything
means,
else is a special.
correct, anything that's not put on, at the organizational meeting, pre-running is not considered regular.
Under our administrative guideline, it says, we're talking about answering questions, which I think is great, but it does say informs the participant that answers will be provided in the opening statements by the superintendent at the next regular board meeting. Will to may, just in case we can't answer it anymore. I mean, I don't know, of course we would try, we do our best to get it as soon as possible, but
Could you say a subsequent instead of the next?
Yeah, I think that's better. 'Cause I want people to know we will
we
eventually.
will do
Yeah,
that. We
because I think that's,
Wait for information.
Right.
But sometimes we can't get it
right away.
right, I mean, we should be able to in a month, but they just,
Subsequent.
I think that's good.
yeah.
And even removing the opening statements, just by the superintendent at the next, or the subsequent.
Right.
So get an answer,
So give it a date.
and we know what it is.
Would you want it as an alternate if it is something that's quite specific, that somebody has raised, that you might answer, you may contact the person individually rather than at the next board meeting, so that the speaker would either receive a reply or the superintendent would address it at the next regular board meeting?
I like it just at the next regular board meeting, because I think, and especially when we have large crowds in our audience, if one person gets up there with a question, 5 more people can think about it, and then they won't hear the answer, and then maybe we have 5 people speaking about it at the next meeting.
Now, if the question is inappropriate, because it's relates to something that we, like a specific staff or a specific student, something like that, we would not answer that.
Right. But they also would be able to even ask the question then, right? So,
Not to
if
say
they were
that it
bringing
won't
up,
happen.
right, right.
So,
Very good. We, real quick, the word aggressive in here, are we keeping that?
Yeah,
The word I've seen is,
and I would take out true. So if make comments that are harassing, aggressive, or
Yeah.
obscene or constitute a threat. And I wouldn't even add all that other stuff, just a threat, that's it.
take that all out of there.
I don't think you need it.
I don't think we need all that.
Yeah, because they could be.
Are we taking that up?
Yes.
So just interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's session, requesting the microphone to be turned off if, or when, I don't know if you want to say, if they make comments that are harassing, aggressive,
Should be
obscene, or
our main
constitute
comment.
a threat.
Okay.
And as Tom pointed out, see how that impacts our meetings, if it gets better.
Alright, so I will get this resent to everyone. I'll do the marked up version here, and then I'll also do a cleaned up version that would be the actual new policy, so that you have both of those, so that we see what that draft was and what we changed,
Sounds good.
so that we can, discuss that for first reading.
Are we covering the part where someone would call out racial issues, religious beliefs, and things like that in their conversation when they should be speaking to the superintendent, the president of the board? Is that language clear to speak to the president of the board?
I think that's-
Labeling people in the meeting, accusing people of being
Well, I think
religious,
that
or
that's
whatever you
where
want to call it,
we-
calling out their religion.
Yeah, that was, if you look at letter F right in here, Tom, I think this is
That
where we're
covers-
trying to get that.
But someone could be talking to them, I think what Tom is saying, you could be talking to the board president saying
Okay.
they, or those.
In general, labeling of people in the community, or even in the room, in the building, at the meeting, while it appears to be addressing the board, the president, but it really isn't, and calling out people in the meeting. Where does that fall?
Because we've heard that in a number.
That's inappropriate.
From both sides.
Correct.
So under I.
Calling out people for being homophobes, xenophobes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's labeling, I mean, you don't want people to be labeled based on their sexual orientation either, you know? Unanimous, that's the direction we go with. Not labeling.
In
Demeaning conversation, demeaning speech, when it should,
Right, in addition,
speaking to the president of the board, not to the,
Often
Indeed.
it's not the person at the microphone either. It's people in the audience, someone's talking at the microphone and you have someone else yell out like, you know, you're going to hell, or you're a sinner, or something like that. So that kind of a comment, we don't really have any language. We have things about people at the microphone, we don't have
Disorderly.
disorderly
demeaning to
conduct.
others,
Yeah, because I don't think that.
to other attendees, or people not in the
Right.
community.
So do we include that here under number I1, where we could add something to the end of this, or?
Or
how much
maybe
that constitute
two,
of
or
that?
maybe two, because it's request on
Because
stop
they're
speaking
pulling
or leave, because they are, you know.
Yeah.
They're not at the microphone, you can't terminate their session.
Yeah, we're not thinking anymore about people speaking out.
Yeah, because this doesn't necessarily,
Number two, would be, I think that's the
yeah, it
place.
doesn't necessarily indicate that it's specifically the person that's at the microphone speaking.
Any individual, including.
Not showing respect for the forum would be as to leave or remove.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
very
so
Cycle
just, if they're
antagonism.
calling out a term, the person in the
Some words
microphone
like
has
that.
the term, so I don't know.
Inciting aggression or rhetorical.
So, yeah, Tom, for yours, where would that fit? What you said, if it is the speaker and we are using, you know, language that's labeling groups of people,
That would be
Address that.
harassing and aggressive speaking. That would fit in number one, because that would be all the speakers.
And again, here number two, you know, if we say request an individual in attendance to stop speaking and or leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum or is disruptive to the conduct and or orderly progress of the meeting. You know, again, that would be something around the table here that, you know, we would need to hold each other accountable and again, I'm telling you your point a little bit earlier too, if we bring this back to paradigm and we're in closer proximity, I think that'll be a little bit easier to monitor.
for sure.
Um,
And it has empathy, like when you're looking somebody in the eyes, it's so different than when you're a football field away.
Right.
And it could just fall under obscene, which is the language we currently.
And number one.
Name call. I don't know. When they move off the target of what they're speaking about, and then they broaden it.
We've got to be careful.
People wear glasses. What do you have to say about it?
If we add name calling though, we have to really, I mean, we need to take a look at some of the books that we're putting in the classroom, because some of them label groups of people, for their beliefs, so I don't know if that's what we want to do.
For example, calling, but I guess you don't want to get too down in the weeds, because if you get down in the weeds, then there's something you can cut down.
Well, and it's difficult because all labels aren't bad, you know.
Name calling.
Name calling.
Second part of it is address comments to the president. And if you're not being addressed to the presiding officer, you shut it down.
I was gonna say, you
Shut it down.
yeah,
Turn the mic off.
you could just, but you could terminate the public remarks if people won't respect the forum.
What I don't want it to happen though is like, if Tom says, you know, Madam President, I feel like this is obscene, and then, you know, Barry doesn't feel like it's obscene, or vice versa, like, us arguing is not gonna be a good look either. You know, so we have to be respectful of each other's opinions, and know that, you know, if one person says it, we don't wanna rebuttal that person and say, oh, well, it's really not offensive, or, you know, we just have to be very mindful.
Well, in a situation like that, what I suggest is that we kind of take a temperature of the whole board. Because if one person stops me and says they have a problem, then I expect everybody to chime in and give their opinions
Oh, gosh.
and
I
decide.
know this is gonna turn into,
Well, it can't just be between me and one other board member. That's when everybody has to take responsibility.
What the policy speaks to the fact that someone doesn't agree with the presiding officer's decision, or in this case, a lack thereof, a motion and a second and a vote would be taken. That's, I mean, we talked about that one a couple work sessions ago as well. So if someone doesn't agree with Mary not enforcing the rules, they could speak up, say, I have a motion that we terminate this person's speech because they're not abiding by the decorum that we've established in multiple work sessions. Maggie could second, then you're gonna take it to a vote, and then that would be enough to shut that person down.
Because in number 4I4, it calls for recess or adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action.
Because there would be a time when the president does that and the rest of the board doesn't agree.
I would hope that we could have some respect for each other's concerns and the statements being made, that we would maybe use the warm. And we would say, you know, if, so to the thing we just said, if you are not calling something out and you feel it's offensive, and you say, you know, I'm offended by this, that our presiding officer would then say, you know, to the person speaking, you know, we do have a concern on our board, this would be your first warning, and if, you know, we have another instance, you know, so that we're not arguing at the table over who feels it's offensive or not, and then if it happens again, then it's.
So number 4 would be apply a warning.
We've got it in number
So
one.
we have it in number 1, we said that we can interrupt more or terminate, so.
So just utilize an average.
Yeah.
That's one of our pieces of practice. As we go through. Okay, so we've got that, we addressed. The other thing, as we were talking, you know, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer, no person may address or question board members, administrators, or other audience members individually.
And a warning could be there too.
Yeah, because that dips into the letter I immediately as well.
I would just say other audience members, I wouldn't say individual. Because a lot of times it's not individual, a lot of times it's collective.
Or other persons.
So no person may address or question board members, administrators, or other audience members.
And if they want to do that in their own time, outside of a board meeting, they have the right to do that. We're not saying you can't, we're just saying this is not.
Yeah, just not a, this thing. Other questions, comments there? So again, I will, I'll clean this up, we'll send it, hopefully tomorrow. And then I will also put, the form together with all of the updates that we have, so that we can take a look at that. And we'll get that sent out. If you have questions individually about that, because I'll send it to the entire group, if you have an individual question, just email me directly, and then I can make that tweak and then resend it to the entire board. That way we're following our proper protocols with that. So that'd be great. All right.
And we need 2 readings on this?
Based on our current policy, yes.
I thought you had told us at one point.
If we didn't have, if we had Neola,
It
I
would be.
mean, it would not be required. So our policy specifically states that it has to be at a preceding meeting. You could do it at a work session though. We
So
have
we
one,
could do one.
you could do, as long as it's on the special meeting notice, that we would be voting or, you know, doing a first reading on the specific policy.
Because we're doing it next week, our
Then you could-
financial.
We could do the first
Yeah,
reading.
first reading.
The first reading at November 1st, and then do second reading November 8th.
Because we shared quite a bit of thought and discussion on this specific topic and, you know, last work session, this work session, that I would be comfortable.
I get a sense that
Yeah,
we're pretty,
would we move
we're pretty
back
close to
here
this.
then in December, or would that still start staying?
Talk about that,
I think, would you move back?
because that's not for us.
Yeah, that's not,
Right,
in that
right.
anyway, so.
So we could just, yeah, December, okay.
So I'll definitely make sure I get this out to everybody tomorrow then.
Everybody see a man agenda.
And, have we already sent the sunshine notice for that yet?
So that's Lori tomorrow.
So we'll get that sent out tomorrow as well. That way, if there are, any questions and, you know, any little tweaks based off of what you're seeing there, you guys can email me over the weekend. Monday, during the day, Tuesday, we'll get all those adjustments made. We can do first reading on November 1st, Tuesday, and then second reading November 8th. With implementation then December.
Right. Because that still gives everybody plenty of opportunity for any additional concerns or feedback. And if for some reason we need to postpone it, that could be, but if it's on the agenda, we would have the option.
Alright, we'll check on that thing first thing here tomorrow morning, then make sure you have, and again, I'll have both versions, the chopped up draft that we have here and the actual board policy.
Thanks for looking at all that.
And I really do appreciate the conversation around this too. I think it's a great first step to, you know, again, just get our arms wrapped around the meetings and make them as productive as possible. I think the other thing, just for the board, you know, I want to continue my community conversations with people as well. And I've had a lot of individual conversations, had some small group conversations. We need to continue that, and I know both Bill and I, as we've been talking about some of the work that lies ahead for us, I think, you know, even taking the Bill and Craig show on the road and trying to go around and have conversations about, you know, what's going on, you know, curriculum-wise, operations-wise, financial-wise in the district, so that we can address different groups is going to be a really important step for us, I think, moving forward too. Just, again, I think all of those meetings that I've had up to this point have been so productive because it's allowed me to hear from a wide variety of people, in kind of a give and take conversation type way. And I think that's where, you know, a lot of the work that we need to do as a district can come out of those conversations. You know, it's hard to do that in a regular board meeting session, you know, which, you know, the purpose of public participation is to hear comments and concerns. Okay, now we can take that and make some adjustments. But, you know, that conversation that we can have sitting across the table from each other or over a cup of coffee somewhere, I think those are where the power in our conversations lie. So, again, it's one of my commitments to the community as well. I want to make sure that we're hearing that.
I think it's a great investment.
Speaking of time, I know we're already 17 minutes past our ending time here.
I would like to address it, like, the pronoun things we pushed off now 2 months.
And the detail coming in on, so I'd like to see a little bit of data.
But
Can you
I feel
probably-
like the pronoun thing would really have been pushed off, and I don't want to have the discussions and move forward.
We
So,
could probably close it down in a hurry too. I'm gonna suggest we take it off. It's in first reading status, and the next thing becomes a second reading. But it sounds like to me the pronoun survey is gonna be greater, a new outline. Are we gonna rebuild the existing suggestion we have on the pronoun survey? Or start it all over? If we're gonna start it all over again, we'll have to just take it off the table. Write a new one, come to the agreement, put it for the first reading, and then perhaps the following one, we can do it and pass it the second. But to continue to sit it, when did we put it on as first reading, what month was that?
so I just don't want, I mean, people in the community have been asking me, it's especially, and I don't wanna continue to string them along. Like, if we're not unanimous about it, let's just vote on it and move on. You know, I mean, I don't want it to go into another month and then it's December before we talk
But
about
I
it.
think what Tom is saying is table it until the language.
Take it off, take it off.
Just
Take
take
it
it off.
off.
You don't vote, you don't vote, you don't vote on the first reading.
But we already had the first reading, so you're
And
saying.
you don't vote, so we're not gonna come to a second reading on it, because it has to be all written again. So how do we edit it? And now
Even
that
if we
edited
did it
version
wrong.
becomes black.
So you're saying, if we're gonna change what was proposed in August, then don't just do away with it, and do another first reading and a second reading, and
That's what you have to do, is come back to a first reading, because if you're gonna edit it, we're gonna change it.
but it sounded like we weren't, I guess we need to have that whole conversation, because it sounded like from Craig, what you were saying, you didn't want a policy on it.
I would suggest right now we not have a policy. Based on all the legal conversations and committees and workshops that I've been in over the last 2 months, and this has been probably 3 or 4 different law firms have said, this is something you don't even want to touch as a school district right now, because there's so much conflicting legal connotation to this right now. Let it work out in the court systems and the federal regulations and in the state laws, and then work through whatever it is that you're gonna be doing now.
So then we have to reverse what was set up by Tim Hank.
Right.
Because right now, that's sitting up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's an
The
opinion,
teachers
it's
all
just a policy.
received it, and that was supposed to be only an isolated incident, which we described to everybody else. So it gave them like a practice, a best practice, so to speak.
And again, so here's what I would suggest. Again, we don't have administrative guidelines right now. This might be an administrative guideline type of piece to the puzzle. You know, we currently aren't doing pronoun surveys in grades K through 5. We haven't heard of any of those taking place. I'm not aware of one at the middle school level. There may have been, but we're not aware of it. There may have been a couple at the high school level last year, maybe 1 or 2 this year, and we're not 100% certain. What I would say to our teaching staff is, if we're gonna be doing a pronoun survey, that needs to be shared ahead of time with parents, so that there's not that opportunity. I would also suggest that if there is a pronoun survey being done, that there's an opt-out answer possibility in that question for the student to personally opt out of that answer.
What would you be asking the student or the parent? And would you expect every parent to respond to it?
So you're talking like opt-in.
Opt out, opt in? Give an opt in.
You know, so if there's a survey being done, that survey would need to be sent out to parents ahead of time, so that they could opt out if they so choose.
And we would track those opt-out options, and those who did not respond, we would chase them down until we have.
Very similar to what we do in other opt-out situations, whether it's a piece of curriculum or so we still have parents that
He's
are.
saying something here.
Yeah, are we gonna say if they don't submit the opt-out, we acknowledge that, well, if you didn't opt out, you're in.
Right.
See, that's like you have to have
That's what
a lack of a negative.
Oh, and opt-out
And
means
what
you have the responsibility to make your wishes known, just like a student who's photographed.
And so they don't. So they don't.
Then,
And that's
And
why-
they don't for a number of reasons. Maybe they didn't get a piece of that. Maybe they didn't open their email.
And that's the reason I'm suggesting we have that opt-out answer within that question as well, because if a student has an issue with that question being asked of them, they have the opportunity not to answer it.
option.
So that gives us another layer of, no, I'm not gonna answer this question.
This is very fair because it gives the transparency. the parents know that there is a survey that is going out. You know, we are surveying, you know, this survey will be given in whatever class on pronouns. It is very clear, people have the right to know that, they understand that it's happening. And if you would not like your child to participate in it, you can opt out here.
So it basically goes back to, I don't have that on me, but our current policy, I don't know if you can pull it up, right, but, it would fall under sex behaviors and attitudes then, it sounds like, because that's, and then to your point, Ginny, at that meeting in August when I brought it up, you said, well, it sounds like it should just fit under there. So, and I believe that says, it's an opt-out. 7.01 maybe? 7.01? I don't have it.
Well, I think the concern with just saying that also is that legally, we're not sure that that's.
And I can't imagine we're gonna have a survey that's just about pronouns, that would be a small
Yeah.
component of
Right.
something, so let's say it
But
was.
again, if that question is asked in a get to know you type of back in school, you know, you need to make sure that,
And per Ohio revised code, the parent has the right to examine the survey. So
We're
that,
up to the definition of survey.
oh, sorry.
No, keep going. Three.
Evaluation next time. Pretty broad.
And that's been part of the issue with some of the legal pieces to the puzzle too. What is a survey? So really, it would almost be, you know, if we're asking this question, whatever format it is, make sure that it's not ahead of time.
And how would you, tell teachers about this? It's not gonna be a policy,
That would be something we would work through our principals with.
and then will you be sending out an updated email to sixth grade teachers and up about what you had already sent out? Or do you stand by what you sent out?
No, but this is, what I've stated here today is what I feel.
Okay, so you would then send out to sixth grade teachers and up an updated email with the new administrative guidelines as to what we're gonna do, and it's opt out. Now, what about if a student does come to the teacher, would you still treat that the same as what you just stated in the email where parents wouldn't be notified?
And again, that's where the legal pieces to the puzzle are so challenging right now. Here's what I would suggest. If you've got a student that comes to a teacher and says, I would like to be called these pronouns, or is indicating to them that they are going through some things from a gender identity standpoint, teachers should be working with that student to figure out, okay, how are we going to support you as we're going through this process here? Oftentimes, I don't think those teachers have the right training to be able to handle that. My suggestion would be that teacher works with that student to approach their counselor to have that conversation, since those are the individuals in our district that have as close to that type of training to support that student in working through whatever supports they might need in that situation. I would also suggest that that counselor would work with that student to identify if there is knowledge with the family and start working through a communication plan with that student, with their family, if that's something that they would deem appropriate at that time.
And what's deemed appropriate, like what would be inappropriate?
If there is a significant issue of safety,
And that's because we have those situations now, right, where we have to report certain things to Child Protective Services. So why are we treating this different than we would treat anything else? Like, why are we just saying, tell the parents, let them know, keep them involved, unless there is a significant safety concern, you know, which then we have to report it. You know, there's
Actually, I mean, there's legal protections with what you say to a counselor. So if a child says, I don't want my family to know about this, and you don't feel that the child is being currently harmed at home or is a threat to themselves, then you're not mandated, reporter.
Does the language in the regulations now states you need student consent?
What language is that? Because I haven't seen the update
And
at all.
we'll be able to pull that for
Okay.
you.
Because I brought 4 different lawsuits that have been won.
And again, there are
Right.
4 different lawsuits
Right,
on the other
so I'm
side
just
too,
saying
so
to
that's
make-
why I don't want to go down this road.
But you did that with the email that you sent out, so that's why we need to address it, right? Like, this wouldn't be the topic if we didn't have the email sent out, and now people are aware of it, so we need to address it. And it's tough, I get it, it's not an easy thing, because there are cases on this side and cases on that side. But I think what was left out there for the teachers, we all know we've had subs that won't sub because of it, we have teachers who are uncomfortable with it, we've had teachers who are totally fine with it, the parents, they're all across the board. But it's up to us to provide that direction as to, if this happens, what are we talking about? Because we sent out something already, so.
And that's why I'm going through what my comments are.
But I don't see it different as to other issues that a child might come to a counselor with. You know, a child might come to a counselor with, you know, so many things, you know, they're struggling with their parents' divorce, or, and that doesn't mean that you call home immediately, unless you feel like they're a threat to themselves. There's a certain privacy. They're a mental health professional, they're licensed as such.
But if you know that there is a gender identity situation or transgender, there is a higher risk of suicide. So if we know that a child is at a higher risk, why are we not involving the parents? You know, I think
Because we have our trained mental health people that do a risk assessment, and unless they're high on the risk, then they can't legally just contact parents. You know, just because someone has a gender identity doesn't mean that we need to call home and act as if something's
So if a
wrong.
child commits suicide and we hid it from the parents that they were transgender or, you know, using different bathrooms or whatnot, is that not on us as a school district? Like, how does that work? You know, I just wanna make sure that we're not putting ourselves out there for risk. And I would hate to ever see somebody tragically pass away because the parents didn't know about it, and who are we to say the parents would or would not support that child? You know, is it based on their home life, their religious beliefs? Like, what are we putting these parameters around?
And I don't think we're saying that. I think it's the child that would say.
The minor
I know
child.
that my parents have said they will kick me out of the home. You know, I mean, that does happen.
I understand that, but I think with the risk being higher of suicide, we have to really thread that needle very carefully. And I think parents, I don't want to usurp parents' rights. I mean, I think everybody here knows where I am.
You know, they're not suicidal because they're in the LGBTQ community, they're suicidal because they're not accepted. And they're not accepted. In some cases, I mean. yes,
Sure, there are some
very
cases where it's
supportive
like that.
homes, but the kids know. If their parents aren't supportive, they would fear.
Well, I mean, if that's how we're gonna handle it, I think parents deserve to know, so whatever we decide on, I think we should email parents as well, let them know how we're gonna handle those situations. You know, as long as we're being transparent about it, fine. At least that puts the ball back in the parents' court, that they know then that we are not going to notify them necessarily unless it's up to the child. And is there a age restriction?
Or
What if it's a 5-year-old?
Unless
Then
there's
what?
a serious threat. If we know that there's a serious threat that the child is suicidal, then that's different. But yes, if the child is saying, I hurt myself, I plan, you know, they're very specific. There's a rating scale that goes with that. that's a different conversation. Yes, then parents are going to.
Well, right now, I mean, there's litigation right now out of, I believe it's Florida, because parents were not told about their child being transgender in school. And then that child tried to commit suicide. And the reason why they didn't tell the parents is just because they were Catholic. And the parents had no problem with it, but they weren't told about it. So you have both extremes. You've got people who will absolutely say, you know, you're gonna put your kids out, or, and then you've got the opposite, where parents are being left out completely, and we're usurping the right as a parent. So I just think whatever we decide, parents deserve to know, and also there needs to be an email that's followed up to sixth grade teachers and up.
Well, I guess my point is that it's not black and white. That there are some cases where you're notifying the parent. There's some cases where you're not notifying the parent. The mental health professional is trained for that decision. And we should make sure that our mental health professionals are trained to the highest way to deal with that situation.
Our guidance counselors though, I mean, this sounds like more of a crossroads thing than guidance counselors.
That's why we have both in there.
So,
It seems to me that we put too much on our teachers to have to make that first judgment.
Yes.
They're licensed to be teachers and not licensed to be a mental health counselor.
That's
And
what I
if
think
they
that
don't
was-
answer, they don't refer it forward, and something does happen, it's on the school system.
So I'd say
That's
we should work with that student and work.
And we're asking our teachers to do too much and take on something that's not their job. I'm sorry. You've heard that saying, it's not my job on
I think
So,
all
it's
of
not
our
my job.
guidance counselors' goal is to help a student make that journey to include their family. That communication piece is always a goal, and it's something that, and the younger the student, the more critically that goal is. So I think in general, and as Maggie said, you do have some situations that are very